have a distinguished citizen named Brian Marshall, who has lived past 10 or 15 years in Tomball, but he's like the preeminent Polish musician in Texas. He has gone from Bremond, Houston, Chapel Hill, Panama Maria to New York City, Maine, and Washington State and played. And he plays basically the music that my great-great-grandfather brought from Poland, the old-timey waltzes and polkas, and he still sings in the Polish language, so we're very, very proud of him. That's why I brought the music today. I don't talk, okay? I was asked to be here, and I really appreciate the fact that y'all want to listen to some little kid from Bremond talk about Bremond and Poland. I've been to Poland twice, once during the communist regime, and that's another story. It takes a long time for that one. And recently, a couple of years ago, I went to Poland. Some of my friends were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. And the Polish weddings were 3 days. You get married early in the morning on a Thursday, and then you start celebrating till Saturday night or Sunday morning, and it's time to go to church. This 50th wedding anniversary was 3 days, and it's amazing dancing and drinking and eating, and then watch the sun come up. It's just an overview. Anyway, Bremond population at the moment is 929. That's big town, you know. But most of our people are rural people. They have farms, and so it gets big on Saturdays or Sundays, you know, going to church and things like that. But basically, you could walk down Main Street and not get ran over any time, you know, and I have done that. But Bremond at one time in the 1930s and 40s had the largest Polish population in the state of Texas. So that we have, Chamber of Commerce has deemed it the Polish capital of Texas. We finally got something, you know. we got to be, you know, thought about one way or the other. And a little bit about me, just to give you a background. Reared in Bremond, went to UT in Austin, loved Austin, decided to stay. Went to the School of Architecture, had my own little business in Austin, and architectural business, designing houses. I got bored with that, packed up my pickup truck and whatever I could do and drove to New York City. Dumb idea. Didn't know anybody in New York. Didn't know uptown from downtown to midtown. You know, from the farm you go, I'm going downtown, and subway system was a mess and a half. This was in the 80s, of course, so you know, New York wasn't as clean as it is now. But I stayed there for 35, 40 years, and you know, I liked what I saw, and they liked me a little bit, and so I got to do some nice projects in New York. Met a lot of famous people, which don't really matter, but my pride and joy is I designed a side altar for St. Patrick's Cathedral, and that was dedicated to Our Lady of Częstochowa, which I'll show you in a moment, and it's a Polish shrine. So the cardinal, we went through 3 cardinals. It took us 8 years to finally do this whole project, and we went through 3 cardinals at that time. The Polish people were very, very generous. It was a $1 million project. So they donated nickels and dimes, you know. But that was, so anytime you're in St. Patrick, go on to the right, in the middle, left, my other left, and go visit the shrine. It's beautiful. So I came back to Bremond, living on the farm, and my mom's still alive. She's 91, I think, and still drives the tractor, and still, we got rid of the cows, but we're going to get more cows later. But she's got 2 donkeys, Mike and Jake. They eat out of her hands, and they're supposed to protect the houses and stuff, but they don't. They sit around just looking for food and love sweets and love bread and anything that she gives them, actually. Okay, enough about Bremond. Bremond does have a Polish Day Festival, what we call Polski Dzień. It's in, I think, the last part of June every year. As you were told, we have dancers from Dallas and from Houston come in. We have polka bands. Brian Marshall plays, but we allow Czechs to come in and play, we're Moravians, and play their polka music, because that's, I go dancing every weekend, basically. There's so many different dance halls in Texas, SPJST halls and other halls that, so what else would you like to know? Bremond has 2 or 3 gas stations, 2 manufacturers of kielbasa, which is Polish sausage, and I brought you a sample, so later on we're going to try that out. And we have a library. We have a very active Chamber of Commerce. We have quite a few churches. I think one denomination of everything. And what else? We have a patrol, and yes. Yes. Be careful of. We are very notoriously known for speeding tickets. Yes. Unfortunately, our mayor has to be Polish, Vicky Swick. The sheriff of Robertson County is Mr. Jezik. He's Polish. Which was a kind of neat thing, which I was very proud of. He heard that there were some Polish officers, really from Poland, visiting Houston. So he got online and says, you know what, why don't you can y'all come to Bremond? And they said, well, what's a Bremond? Where's Bremond? So they kind of Googled it or whatever, and they said, well, there's nothing there. He said, come and you'll see. So we got the community together, and we had about 300 people show up, brought potluck, sort of like, and hosted these, I think there was 5 police officers. But they weren't just police officers, they were like the higher up, the dignitaries, they go around and promote Poland. But it was kind of neat, because we got to talk, finally, to real Polish people. And our language is quite different. It's a 100-year-old language, and we still speak, some of the few words, but it's like their great-grandparents would speak, and it's like any language that develops and changes, and so it was a fun thing, and the biggest joy was Poles like to drink vodka, but vodka was doing shots, and that was flowing that evening. Like I said, I've been to Poland several times, a couple of times. I went to search for family the first time. That was during the communist regime, and it was kind of neat that every day I'd have to go to the police office and sign in. And they want to know exactly where you were all the time. Exchanging money, I think it was 33 zloty per dollar. And for a zloty, you could, buy a steak dinner, if they had steak. But the idea is that the zloty was very, very poor money exchange. But on the black market, if you went across the bridge or stayed on the bridge long enough, gentleman would come up to you and offer you 100 zloty per dollar. And so lived pretty good. Went to university there for 6 months, and that was kind of neat. Learned a little bit more of the language and a little bit of the history of Poland. Kind of self-taught, but going to the university at Lublin was interesting. People are so friendly. At that time, they had nothing. They would stand in line for several hours just to get a half a loaf of bread, if they did have it. It was strange because I also visited Czechoslovakia at the time, and in the Czech lands, they had a lot of vegetables, but no meat. Poland, just right across the river, had a lot of meat, but no vegetables. So, and they couldn't, pass it through. So there was a lot of smuggling going back and forth. But that was very interesting. I visited the countryside, and it was quite beautiful. Very similar to Texas, though. With some of the hills, and I would say East Texas, not West Texas, but a lot of trees, a lot of gardens, a lot of small plots of land where people, vegetables, take the cows out one at a time and hook them up to a tree or something, let the cow eat all day, then bring them back. I mean, this was done in the 70s. So, it's sort of like rural never developed into anything. These days, though, all the little private little lands are now in beautiful houses, because in the 90s, a lot of the gentlemen from Poland came to the United States, and they worked, and they sent all their money back home. There would be, in New York, I know several instances where 3 or 4 guys would stay in one room apartment and share the costs and everything, and then save all their money and send it back to Poland. And that's how they really got around, I think. It was interesting because a lot of the people that came, they were very well educated. I mean, they had degrees and everything, but they couldn't get a job, a good job in the United States, and so they drove cabs, they cleaned houses, minimal stuff that us Americans don't want to do. But it was interesting. I belong to a Polish Catholic church up there, the oldest Catholic church in the Eastern Coast, and that was kind of neat because we did all the old traditions, what they call Boże Ciało on Thursday. We'd close down the streets of Manhattan and make procession with the Eucharist. We would decorate the altar for every occasion. Every Sunday we had something going on, a baptism, a confirmation, communions. So that was kind of neat because I learned a lot of traditions from them. And that was kind of an interesting situation for me because I was really wanting to learn as much as I could. And you're right, at the end. So I had to stop at you. That was interesting because Bremond at that time was kind of getting away from all their old traditions, particularly in the church, because we didn't have any Polish priests anymore. So now we're trying to revive a little bit of tradition back to Bremond. And we do a kolendy, which is right before Christmas. Well, it's supposed to be really right after Christmas, but right before Christmas, we get a group of people together with Brian Marshall, who's a fiddle player, and a couple of more musicians. His sons play very nice instruments also. And we go door to door and sing Polish Christmas carols. And one of the characters, I mean, there's angels and there's, 3 wise men and St. Nicholas, not Santa Claus, but St. Nicholas. And we go to a lot of the doors, and sometimes we're invited in, sometimes we're not. When we're invited in, they usually give us, something to eat and something to drink, and encourage us to sing a little bit louder and a little bit longer. But which is interesting because one of the characters is not the devil, but it's a character that's made up of different animal parts, like the hooves of a goat and the head of a cow and the carcass of a deer or something, and it's the antlers of a deer. And that's sort of be the evil character, and it's supposed to scare the children. Well, sometimes it scares the elderly people too. My father, I mean, this was an old tradition, so we kind of revived it, but my father tells me that when he was small, they used to come visit him and or his family, and he'd be so scared he'd be sitting underneath the bed until they left, but my grandfather would invite them in, they'd be singing and dancing and any excuse for a party. But my father would be terrified, and he'd be underneath the bed shaking because the character was so terrifying. So we still do that. So we sort of died, I think, in the 60s, 70s, but I think we're coming back pretty strong. Poland. Poland was established in 969. One of the Polish kings, it was a kingdom, fiefdom, whatever you want to call it, and one of the Polish kings fell in love with a Czech princess. And St. Cyril and Methodius had gone to the Czech lands and converted most of the Czechs into Catholics. So the Czech princess was Catholic. The Polish king was not. I think they still believed in idols and things like that in 969. But he decided that he was going to become Catholic so they could marry her. But along in his line, everybody had to become Catholic. So the whole country was Catholicized, or what do you want to call it, Christianized. So Catholics to this day are 90% Catholic. And they go to church. And that's why they're kind of strict on certain things, and not everybody agrees with it, but that's the country. But after a while, in 1780s, I think, the Polish people started electing kings. They weren't a hierarchy. It was more like, I'll run for king. But the Parliament at that time ratified the Declaration of Independence. It's the second Declaration of Independence right after the United States, and it was sort of directed from that, from the U.S. But that lasted for maybe 2 years, and the countries of Prussia, Russia, and the Austrian-Hungarian regime, they decided that Poland was getting too strong. So they invaded and divided Poland up. So from 1780 till 1919, end of World War I, Poland didn't exist. That's when a lot of the Poles left Poland, and that's 1860 is when the first Poles came to Bremond. And that was because of oppression, and a lot of people were being put into, a lot of men were being put into the Polish army against their wishes. That was sort of like the Russian-Prussia idea is, you turn 16, you have to join the army for 10 years or whatever, till you die, I guess. So nobody wanted to do that, so that's when they started coming to the United States. Pana Maria in South Texas, close to San Antonio, they're the first Polish settlement in in Texas. They established a church, and they claim to be the oldest Polish Catholic church in America. Bremond don't have that distinction. We didn't establish a church until 1889, I think. So we're not that old. And we destroyed our beautiful church, so we got a nice new modern edifice that nobody likes. But that's the way of. But anyway, back to Poland. What I brought today is Polish flag with Polish eagle on it, the white eagle. That's been a symbol of Poland since 969. There's some Polish dolls there with regional dress on, and I've got a map of Poland here, and Poland's divided into, I think, about 15 different regions, so they each have their own distinct costume. I brought my vest and my hat that I wear to Polski Dzień every year. They do very nice linen work, crystal. I brought some. The crystal is interesting because it has a pattern on it, and it's basically a Jewish star. Poland was very, very inviting to the Jews. They accepted, because at one time, many times, but at a certain time in history, the Jewish people were not very well liked in Europe. So the Polish king said, "Come on, come to Poland." So that's why there was a large Jewish settlements in Poland. Many towns were, at least half of the population was Jewish. They influenced the language. They influenced the culinary. So we're sort of like this, the Jews and the Poles, because we lived together so long, and so we just kind of accepted each other's ways and means. And I had several friends in New York that they would talk Yiddish and I would be talking Polish, and we would get along. We figured it out what we were talking about. What else? The paper cutouts here, over there, and some over here. This is called Wincznanki. Wincznanki is a folded paper, and what they did originally, they would whitewash their walls and ceilings every year in these little villages, and then they would paint different designs. And then when that kind of fell out of favor, they took paper, and you would see just whatever they could keep, because they didn't have a whole bunch of stuff. So they would keep papers and then fold it and cut it. And they originally cut it with sheep shears. Sheep shears are these long, not scissors, not knives. So, but you'll notice most of the motifs are roosters in different forms, different patterns. In one region of Poland, that's all they do. I guess roosters are a sign of virility, I guess. Very good. In the pottery, of course, it's very, very popular now from Bolesławiec, south. It's close to the German border, south border. And the wood cutting. Wood cutting is from the Zakopane area. Zakopane is in the mountainous area, very close to the Czech border. The Czechs and the Poles share a mountain range there. And the Górale are a distinct people. They wear woolen clothes, and they still do this to this day. And they speak a little bit different Polish dialect, if you will. They dress a lot differently from. No, I didn't bring one. They dress differently. They sing differently. I mean, and they just love life. But they live in the mountains, and so their architecture is just amazing. It's all wood, and very steep pitched roofs, of course, because of the snow and everything. Um, and just a fun-loving people. And drop of the hat, they'll start dancing. um, The woolen items here, they're from Woolwich, and they each village has its own distinct little pattern. So if I brought this to Woolwich, and they would tell me exactly where that came from, what town or whatever. And that also is in the woven pieces. This is a picture of Our Lady of Częstochowa, which it's just part of it. It oh, thank you. It was a picture supposedly painted on St. Luke's by St. Luke on the Last Supper table. Now that's the history of it. It came to Częstochowa, which is this little town here, and they built this beautiful shrine to her. The picture there of her? Yeah. Yeah. This is a picture, and it's probably 18 by 24 inches. Okay. And legend has it that the Swedes were invading Poland from the north, of course, and they came right into central Poland, all the way into central Poland. They almost overran the whole country. But, hold this up again. The monks that were in the monastery brought the picture out, and that when they brought the picture out, the Swedes sort of lost the battle immediately. But one of the Swedes came up and slashed the obraz, the picture, twice. And to this day, the picture is still there. The picture still has the slashes to it. And they've tried to restore it several times, and it's never been restored. It keeps reappearing. So this is sort of, and His Holiness St. John Paul II, when he arrived, they brought the picture out, and that was one of the first times that it left the monastery. Is when the Pope came to Poland the first time. Okay, great. I brought some cookbooks. If y'all would like to pass them around, look at them, get some ideas. Good-looking pictures in there too. Make you hungry. And this is a book. If you get a moment to look at, it just gives a little history. It's more of a picture book. Every country is so beautiful. But of course, I'm a little biased. But what else? That's my outfit. The box over there is interesting. It's a little miniature little box, and I guess they use it as a jewelry box right now. But that, every girl that's in the village, I don't know if they do it too much in the cities now, but every girl gets it's a hope chest, but it's decorated from, with all the different Vinchnikes on it. And once she's born, she gets a hope chest. And so they just put stuff in it. And they're well known for their, what they call pierzina. Pierzina is feather beds. So every house has a couple of geese. That's in Bremond. So that, and we take the geese, and once it's all defeathered, I guess, they make czarnina out of it. Czarnina is blood soup. And it's sweet, which I don't understand. It's got raisins and prunes and duck blood, geese blood. You can't make czarnina out of chicken, but you can make it out of duck. So a lot of the farmers still have ducks, and this time of year they start making czarnina. We make our own wine too. Uh, in Bremond, they have Mustang grape. I'm sure it's all around, but those men, they just love. You can see them picking on the side of the road or on the fence lines, picking Mustang grapes and dewberries. They make wine out of dewberries. I'm not crazy about that, but the grape wine I'll take. That's my outfit that I wear. This is the Gorale hat. It has seashells on it, and other than the north of Poland, there's no seashells. So, don't know why. I've asked several people. They say, well, I guess it's imported, so they think it's big shot. They can afford something. The vest is from the region Donetsk. Oh, that's from my chicken. If you do sewing, you should really look at this. This is all handmade. It's outstanding. But that's that region of South Poland by the border of Moravia that does it. So that's, in Poland at one time was huge. It took over, went all the way to Austria-Hungary, to Russia, to Germany. I mean, it was huge. So our influences have been amazing. But back in the day, the most influenced people were the French. I think we got our crystal from the French. We got our manners from the French. We kiss hands. We kiss 3 times on the cheek when we, instead of 2. And the food, I think, presentation particularly. Even if the food doesn't taste good, it looks good. Yeah, the crystal, like I said, had that Jewish star on it. That's typical of Polish crystal. Yeah. Am I talking too long? No? No? Oh. This is you think we got bad times with wild hogs in Texas? These are dangerous, and they're everywhere. They're in cities and stuff too. The hand carving is just outstanding, though, what they've done to it. And they've taken some of the wood pieces and put brass in it, and hammered brass little areas. And yeah, that one. And I would say the state flower of Poland would be the red poppy. It grows in the springtime, and you see fields, and just like our bluebonnets, it goes in fields and fields wild, and it's just, when you drive through, it's just gorgeous. Let me get all tangled up here. What else? What would you like to know? Any questions? Yes?
When you traveled to Poland, did you have to visit the salt mines?
Yes, Wieliczko.
Yeah.
In Wieliczko, thank you. It's close to Krakow. It's been in production for 200, 300 years, and it's still in production. That's where, at one time, the salt from those mines was the economy for all of Poland, because they imported it, and we'll say import, but I guess they traveled with it. But what's interesting, you take a little elevator down, it's maybe 4x4 elevator down, and you go 5 or 6 stories below surface, and there's cathedrals down there. That's what I said, the Poles are so religious. I don't want to say cathedrals, but there's altars down there that they've cut out of the salt. Hanging chandeliers that are lit out of salt. What else was in there? I forgot. It's kind of a assortment of not just religious, but they have dances down there. They have concerts down there. So there's like seating made out of salt.
And they don't mine the salt?
No, they still do mine the salt, yeah. But this has become a UNESCO thing where they still can mine the salt, but they can't destroy the thing. And none of it was destroyed during World War II, which is amazing. Part, yes, yes. Because of the air with the salt air, they have some kind of, I forgot what that's called, but you can go for a week and lay in the salt mines, and it's supposed to be good for your respiratory and stuff like that. Oh, okay, good.
Is it similar to the ones in Austria?
I,
Salt mines, like in Hallstatt?
I think so, yes, yes, yes. Of course, Warsaw being the capital of Poland, it was totally destroyed during World War II. I think 1% of the buildings were livable or usable, and it was basically rubble. But they rebuilt it, and almost to exact was it like it was before. It took a while because of the communist regime. They didn't really want Poland to be very strong, and the symbol of Warsaw being the capital, they didn't want Warsaw to be become really prominent again. But there is a section of Warsaw called Old Town, and it's Renaissance buildings, and they took each brick and redid the thing to rebuild it exactly like it was 200, 300 years ago. Also, I guess the Capitol building, if you will, where the kings lived, they rebuilt that. Well, like I said, most of Warsaw has been rebuilt, palaces and even some of the ruins that were, kind of blasted up. They replaced it, and it's still ruins, but it's, so I think that's kind of interesting. Krakow was the original, back in the days, the original capital of Poland. It was not harmed, thank God, during the war. I guess they made some kind of agreement, don't know what. But if you ever visit, Warsaw's nice, it's modern also, it's got big high rises and things. But Krakow's gorgeous, it's stepping back in time. The streets are kind of, wavy and up and down, and you get lost easily in Krakow. I get lost easily in Krakow. But it's a gorgeous town. It's like Prague, almost, Prague. And if you've ever been to Prague. Anything else? Yes?
What was the reason for the Polish people to send in remodeling that area?
Oh, thank you. That's a good story. Bremond had a lot of plantations back in the 1800s, big ones, several thousand acres. And one gentleman, John C. Roberts, he had trouble getting plantation workers, and he didn't want to become a slave owner. So there was a Jewish guy, Mr. Levy, rattling through town, who was from Poland, and he came through Bremond, and he was peddling wares and stuff. And he came to Mr. Roberts, and they had a little discussion, and he said, well, I know, maybe I'll ask some Polish people to come. So he wrote letters back to Poland, to his village, and Mr. Bartula came, Joseph Bartula. He brought his family. He had 5 sons. I know the names, but don't remember them right offhand. But anyway, they sailed to the port of Louisiana. Then they went to Galveston, and from Galveston they walked to New Waverly. New Waverly, close by, not too far. He stayed there for 2 years, and that's when Mr. Levy said, hey, why don't you come to Bremond? I wrote you, and you're in New Waverly. But Mr. Bartula had brother-in-law that lived in New Waverly at the time. So he was staying with him, and all of a sudden he got some money. I guess he had a good crop that year. And so he went to, had enough money to come to Bremond. He brought his wife, and by that time, all of his 5 sons were dead. Rattlesnake, one died during the passage. Diseases, I guess. And his wife was quite distressed. Katerina was her name. And they came to Bremond, and they stayed with the John Roberts, and he sharecropped. You get 1 bushel. You give 1 bushel of corn for every 4 that you get, or harvest, or whatever, back to the plantation owner. And he did pretty well, and he was very, very happy. The Roberts family was just so nice to them. So he wrote back to his village, and within 2 years, Bremond had immigrants coming almost daily. And the train had come through, and it was a passenger train. So it was a little bit easier for them to come from Corpus, or Galveston, excuse me, to come up north. And the train stop was right in Bremond. So they just got right off, or they could get right off at the plantation. So that was interesting. Bremond celebrated its 150th 150th sesquicentennial. Try to say that. Recently, actually last month, and I got to portray Joseph Bartula. And the only reason I got the part was because I could speak a little Polish. So, so we had a dinner, and we had dignitaries come in and talk, and that was very nice. There's also a little town, it's no longer there, called Wooten Wells. Wooten Wells is a little bit north of Bremond, maybe 5 miles. And Wooten Wells was at one time the place. It was bigger than Marlin. It was well known for its hot springs, and their water was medicinal. They had hotels. They were bigger than Bremond, actually. They had hotels and whole saloons, of course. But it burnt, and they tried to rebuild, but then they couldn't. And then now it's just a little historical marker and Spile the Road. But that was interesting because there was a trolley, a horse-drawn trolley, coming from Bremond to Wooten Wells because they had saloons. And so when Wooten Wells burnt down, Bremond started building saloons. We had 13 saloons, and at one time, and they were all prosperous. Polish people like to drink. But at the time, it was only men, of course, could get into the saloons because it wasn't ladylike to go into the saloon. But that was, I have to say that every time I talk to somebody. I said, we have 13 saloons. We have 3 now. And at the time, downtown was 3 blocks long and 2 blocks wide. So, in that small little area, over every other, even next door to each other, there were saloons. I guess, and most of them are run by Poles. I would say most of them, but not all of them. But so that was kind of interesting tie-in with Wooten Wells. I guess it was bad for Wooten Wells, good for Bremond. We done?
Sherry's got a question.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
About this sweet-looking.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. In Poland, on Palm Sunday, we don't have regular palms like they have here in the United States. So the people would go out, and Palm Sunday in Poland, it's kind of warm already. It's springtime, the week before Easter. And they would pick out the flowers or save some wheat from the year before, or some dried thing and make what we call palmolve. And they would carry this on Palm Sunday to church, have them blessed, and they would always be portrayed in the house somewhere nice.
So every family made one?
Every family made one, and every person made one, basically. Well, the parents probably made it for the children, and the mother probably made it for the father, because, you know, we don't do stuff like that. Anything else?